Hi, everybody. It's the Dagger, and today on Where They Know, I'm talking with Al Quartemont. Al, someone who had spent a fair amount of time in the Rhinelander area and is now down in Louisiana. Al, how are you?
Hey, John, it's great to talk with you. I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to hear it. And obviously you'll have a lot of things to bring us up to date on. But let's start from the beginning. Where were you born, and tell us about what you did as a youngster?
Oh, well, I was born in Milwaukee, actually. Spent most of my life growing up in Cudahy, which is just outside of Milwaukee, I guess considered a suburb. So, pretty much growing up, I was all sports all the time. Loved listening to the Brewer games, especially on the radio, Bucks as well, especially during the Eddie Doucette years. And, just overall was really into it, and I think probably around 5th or 6th grade, I decided I really wanted to go into some kind of sports broadcasting. So everything kind of pointed me toward that, and ended up going to college at Marquette University, which was just a great place to go to college, and that kind of led to some good things there as I was able to start out my broadcast career in Milwaukee, of all places.
Did you start out at WTMJ, or did you start out?
I did.
You did?
I did. Yeah, I'd worked as an intern my senior year, and then from that was able to develop a part-time job on the TV side, led to a part-time job on the radio side, where I started out being the producer for Jack Baker. Some people might remember him doing the sports talk shows. This was around 1987. Did that for about a year with Jack, and then they replaced him with Brian Manthe for a while, and then they switched Brian to the morning show and asked me if I wanted to actually host the evening talk shows, which of course I jumped at that opportunity and did that for about a year and a half. Things didn't quite work out well for Brian in the morning, so they kind of put him back in the evening rotation with me, and you kind of had two people to do one job. So I ended up switching to the weekends for a little while. Then they came and said, we're going to cut back on our programming, and boom, I was out of a job. So that was around 1990. Had about a 3-year run, which I really enjoyed. Covered the Bucks, the Brewers, pretty much day in and day out. Packers a little bit as well when I could, because usually I was doing a studio show after the broadcasts, and just loved it, but had kind of been getting an itch for TV. So this was in the summer of '90. Applied for a job in Green Bay, which I came in second on. And as it turned out, the guy they hired, this was in the middle of July, couldn't start until September 1st, so they called me back, the sports director did, who was John Mino at the time, and asked me if I would mind working just a temporary position for a month, without trying to be tacky, and position it the right way, saying, hey, we'll give you a chance to get some experience and get a nice tape. And I jumped at it, so went there, really enjoyed my time, and learned a lot. And as that turned out, it was at that time where Rod Ketter left WJFW. He was the sports director, and he and I had worked in Milwaukee together. He had been a sports producer on the TV side over there. He moved on to Eau Claire, recommended that they hire me, went up, interviewed with Chris Oatman, and started my Rhinelander career.
It's interesting because I think both you and Chris ended up going from TV to radio.
Right, that's true. Actually, the way my career went in Rhinelander was I was a sports director for about a year, and then I got a call from WIFC down in Wausau, which at the time was owned by the Journal Company, which owned WTMJ. And so they offered me a position doing morning radio, news, and sports, and a little bit of co-hosting with Duff Damos on the morning show then. And I just felt I probably jumped at that chance maybe a little bit prematurely. I should have been maybe more patient and gotten something that I really, really wanted. But, financially it was kind of a struggle back then, working at Channel 12. So, took that position. But as soon as I did, I realized that I didn't want to be in Wausau. I really missed Rhinelander a lot. So I started trying to figure out, how can I maybe get back there? So I took a job for a little while with a cable operation in Anago, but after some philosophical differences with the owner, I just decided, you know what, I want to make a run at things and just see if I can do this on my own. So I actually went and talked with the general manager at the time at Channel 12, Marie Fields, and asked her how she would feel about doing maybe like a Sunday night sports high school type of a show. And she was very interested, and she said, well, how are you going to do this? And I said, well, I don't know, I'm going to try to get enough money to buy a camera. And she's like, well, how are you going to edit it? And I said, I'm not sure. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, if you would be willing to share your footage with us, we'll let you use our editing equipment to put together the show. And, I mean, that was just an amazing break. So went from that to rounding up some sponsors and, got some people like Brian Shimkus from Shimkus Auto Body and Travel World and Rhinelander Paper Company with Mel Davidson, who all really liked the idea and got enough sponsors to make a go of it. Mom loaned me the money for a camera, and, I was kind of off and running. So we debuted in, I believe it was December of 1991, and just kind of got it going from there and had about a 6-year run on Channel 12, and then did another 3 years working with Rhinelander Cable TV for about an 8-year run overall.
One of the things I wanted to ask you before I forget here, with you being at WTMJ, and Jim Irwin, had just passed away here shortly. Did you get a chance to work with him at all?
I did. Part of my role when I first started there working with Jack Baker and on the radio side was I was assigned to go to whatever sporting events we had in town, Bucks, Brewers, Marquette, and give post-game interviews, which I would then cut into sound bites that Jim would use for his morning newscast. So being I was more of an evening guy and he was a morning guy, we didn't work a lot side by side, but certainly, got to know each other as far as, first name basis and everything. And I'd see him at Bucks games or whatever. He was always cordial toward me. With me personally, it wasn't like a close working relationship as maybe with some others, but, I certainly respected him a lot as a professional, and he did an amazing job with the Packer games all those years. So, he's certainly a legendary figure, and I was sad to hear of his passing because he meant a lot to Wisconsin sports, and truly one of those legendary figures.
Now, who was doing the Brewers games when you were down there?
That was Bob Uecker, of course, and Pat Hughes at the time. Pat was his sidekick, and of course now Pat with the Cubs is the main man down there. So worked a little more with Pat on things like talking baseball that we did over the winter months, and Bob Uecker was a guy that, again, every time I'd see him, he'd always say hello. In fact, he'd always say it this way, he'd say, "Hey, Alfonso, buddy." That's exactly what he'd say. So, yeah, those were really some special times. I love those years, and I really love covering the Brewers first and foremost. Tom Trebelhorn was the manager then, and I really got to know him well and got to know his son a little bit and spent some time with him. And some of the players, you kind of, being a younger guy, some of the players you kind of develop a little bit better relationship with than maybe some of the older guys. And Glenn Braggs, actually, we got to be kind of friends for a while there, and Gary Sheffield, kind of got to know him a little bit, and Dale Swain was a guy that I always just loved to just sit and talk baseball with. So, one thing even when I was at that age, which, I was only at the time like 22, 23, 24, I really did appreciate the opportunities I was given, and I really felt like I worked hard and made the most of them. And even now look back, and I'm thankful for those years because it kind of gave me an exposure to working in a large market and covering pro sports day in and day out, which I enjoyed, but there were sides of it too that kind of got tiring after a while because, the ego and always feeling like you're having to almost beg people to do things. And I think right when I got to Rhinelander, I noticed a big difference in covering high school sports where you had people that actually appreciated when you came to something, would thank you. People treated you like the celebrity rather than you, having to kind of try to deal with people that actually were celebrities. So it was just a different feel, and there's just something about that community that I just fell in love with, and I'm so glad that I was able to make that time there for a 10-year run.
Now, you got to do play-by-play as well, especially with basketball up in Rhinelander, which was very, very successful during those years. And you actually had a pretty good relationship with the head coach, Rich Fortier.
Oh, I love Rich. I mean, he was such a great guy. And I love all the coaches that I worked with at Rhinelander for the most part. I don't think I had too many issues with anybody. But Rich, came in and succeeded Jack. And, Jack Bennett did such a good job with the program as far as getting them to a strongly competitive level that when Rich came in, I think everybody was like, who's this young guy? But, Rich, he just is Rich, and he never tried to be anything but himself. And I just think he gave a positive nature to the program and confidence in a lot of the kids. Came in at the right time. First year, bang, takes them to state with Troy Doring and some of those guys that, they just had a sensational run in the playoffs after having kind of a so-so regular season, and then made it down to state. And that was just unbelievable. I'll always remember that sectional at Green Bay, and Troy was just unbelievable, leading the Hodags down to the state tournament. So that's definitely one of my most memorable teams to cover, and I love covering Rhinelander basketball. It's funny, I'm down here in Louisiana now, and honestly, John, I can't even go to high school games here because they're not played with the same style. It's almost like just watching playground basketball. And there's no form, there's no, set offenses, nobody plays defense. Great athletes. I mean, Louisiana is just, it's unbelievable how good the athletes are. But one thing about Wisconsin, and, people can't even really appreciate it until they leave the state, is how good the coaching is in Wisconsin for all sports, and how good the facilities are in almost every school compared to down in Louisiana. And I know Rhinelanders had to, really push to try to improve their facilities, but even as old as their facilities were, they were still way better than most of them that you find down here in Louisiana. So that was really just something that really stood out to me when I actually moved down here.
Now, what sports did you play as a kid? Well, I mean, I'm taking it that baseball was something that you were highly involved in.
Yeah, I never played baseball competitively in Little League or anything like that. We did have a Cub Scout softball league that I played in. But mostly my passion for it came by just playing with my friends. And, that was back in the day where as kids, you could go anywhere and play. And you never had any sense of fear. There was really never any sense of any kind of danger. I remember we played actually in in a cemetery, kind of like the vacant lot part of it that they were still expanding into. And then, later like a church ball field, or you play at the school, you paint or use chalk to make like a strikeout zone and just use like a tennis ball and a bat, just whatever we could. I probably played baseball the most. I did play team sports basketball until I was a freshman in high school, and then I just didn't really want to pursue basketball. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I started kind of getting into football a little bit more and played 2 years. I went out finally when I was a junior after working out for a year to get ready, and played 2 years there. And our high school team in 1982 at Cudahy made it to the state championship game for, at that time, Class A, which would have been, was it Division I? I guess Division I it would have been considered. And we ended up losing to Anago, of all teams. But they were good.
Now, I remember you and I we've done some interviews before, and you were doing some 1-minute snippets for me.
Yeah.
And one day we were talking, and you told me that something horrible had happened at one of the NASCAR races. And it was when Dale Earnhardt Sr. Was killed in an accident. Can you kind of go through the feelings you had on that day when that happened?
Well, I think, mostly I felt bad for people that were huge Dale Earnhardt fans, because I'm not a big NASCAR guy. I never have been. And, Louisiana certainly is part of NASCAR territory. But just, I think, Earnhardt was one of those guys that transcended racing because he was more of a household name just across the sports world. So, like my mom, big Dale Earnhardt fan. So I really felt bad. And it's just a sick feeling when, somebody dies doing the very thing that they're great at. And, here we are, gosh, that's 10 years ago, right? 12 years or 11 years ago now. So, time really flies. But yeah, I think it was just that feeling that, wow, I can't believe he's gone. Unreal. So.
Now, it's kind of interesting because the work that you've done has, in the past and everything you've talked about actually prepared you for what you're doing down in Louisiana right now. And tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I'm actually teaching full-time at a college down here. It's a private Christian school. Louisiana College is the name of it. And it's located in the central part of the state in a little community called Pineville, which is actually right across the river from Alexandria, Louisiana, which maybe not too many people are familiar with unless they did time in the military, or especially in the Air Force. There used to be an England Air Park here, and Fort Polk is not too far from where we're at. This is actually an area where they planned and practiced for D-Day, so it holds a lot of military significance. But I started teaching full-time at Louisiana College 3 years ago, teaching journalism. And when I took over the program, it was pretty much just a print journalism program, but now we have broadcast journalism as well. And amazingly, it's funny how the Lord works sometimes. Amazingly, I have a whole group of students who are just wanting to be sports broadcasters. So we're almost developing a sports broadcasting niche. And the nice thing is the school's not big. We're about 1,200 students. And I have, throughout the whole program right now, I think about 15 students total. So it really lends itself to more of a one-on-one mentoring type of process. And we do play-by-play for some of our sporting teams as well, pretty much all the ones that we can do. And our sports teams here have been pretty competitive. Our women's basketball team right now is ranked 23rd in Division III. Our football team made it into the top 25 rankings during this past season. Our head coach for football is a man named Dennis Dunn, who used to be the high school coach at Shreveport Evangel High School. Some might recognize that name. They were national champions probably 15 years ago when Brock Berlin was the quarterback there. So we're very fortunate to have him, and we really, the thing about Louisiana College is we're the only Division III school for football in the state. So while a lot of the top talent goes to Division I or 1AA schools, we're getting some really nice athletes here at the Division III level. And I'd say our school, we've got our eyes on Whitewater and Mount Union to try to get to that level. I know that's the goal of our coaches, so it'd be great if we can get there one day. Our softball team has been consistently ranked in the top 10 year in and year out. And a couple years ago, I thought we were going to win the regional and go to the World Series, which would have been in Eau Claire that year. As it was, the team we lost to ended up winning it all. So, yeah, but it's been fun. I'm really really enjoyed it. And it's exactly what you said. All those experiences you have in life, you wonder where that's all taking you, and then you end up teaching in college, and that's the last thing I ever thought I would end up doing, but it's really been enjoyable. And then recently I started actually doing some part-time radio here locally, and I'm doing a 3-hour morning show every day.
Wow.
that we just kind of talk news and sports, so it's been kind of fun.
You look at all the things that have happened to you, and where you came from, in a larger market, working with professional athletes, and then you come to Rhinelander. Did you feel like you were taking a step down, or were you taking a step forward in what you really wanted to do in the future?
I saw it a little bit as not so much a step back as more just like a temporary step. My full plan when I came to Rhinelander in 1990 was maybe to be there a year, cut my teeth in terms of television, and then move on. And as the folks there know, that's pretty much the pattern of everybody that comes through there. Yep. They're there for maybe a year or two. What I didn't anticipate was staying there. A lot of that had to do more with spiritual reasons, that actually during that time period became a Christian. And so I really wanted to stay connected with my church and everything, and that's, that was really the main thing that changed for me. No longer was pursuing my career the number one focus, as it was just trying to have a living provided for and trying to make something work. And I'm just, thankful that it did. I can honestly say when I came there, I was really disappointed that I didn't get that job in Green Bay, because I love Green Bay, and that temporary position I was telling you about. I really, really loved the station and the job that I was doing. And it's funny because the general manager came down the last day I was there. He said, if we had known that you could do this level of work, we would have hired you, but we just weren't sure because you were kind of an unknown commodity, only working in radio. And it kind of made you feel good and then, bad at the same time, because, I'm thinking, oh, man. But hey, it all worked together for good, for the right reason, and that's the main thing, is you start to learn that things happen the way that they're supposed to, and, you don't regret anything. Because, from all that, then you go on and meet your wife, and, here you are, 20 years later, and I've got a wife and 7 children, and, doesn't probably work out that same way. So you can't regret anything that happens.
Absolutely. I tell you, when you and I talk, the time just flies, and we're kind of running down on time here right now. But what I'd like to do is have you let people know where they can get a hold of you, because I'm sure there's people that would love to be able to talk to you.
Definitely. Well, one thing, people can look me up on Facebook, and I've actually connected with a lot of Rhinelander athletes and coaches and different people, not only from Rhinelander, but a lot of the different schools that I used to cover throughout, the Northwoods there. So Facebook's a good place. You can always contact me through Louisiana College, and my email is just my last name, Quartemont at lacollege.edu. And, yeah, I'd love to hear from folks, because I definitely miss a lot of people. We were up there the summer before last, rented a house on one of the lakes for a week and just went around and visited people. But you never feel like you have enough time when you come up and visit. So, definitely miss seeing all the folks and keep up with the teams. But I still definitely try to follow it as much as I can.
I know talking to people, everybody misses you as well.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. So, yeah, it was a special time, and I think, we enjoyed a special time of Rhinelander sports, too. I was reflecting on just some of the great athletes that we had during that time. Lindsey Burke, and I mentioned Troy Doring, of course, with Jason Doring, and Brendan O'Brien, and the Drake brothers, and Becky Knutson in that basketball team in the mid-'90s. And it was just a neat time, and I'm thankful that I was there for it.
Great. Well, Al, I want to thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to talking to you down the line.
Thanks, John. Good talking to you, too.